Want to know how much law firms should be spending on Google local service ads and how to break down the budget effectively? Before we dive in, I want to share that if you want to book a one-on-one call with my team to discuss your LSA or local service ad strategy, text Audit to 619-304-5155 for a free audit of your local service ads. All right, let's get started. First question is how much should law firms spend on Google local service ads? The answer to this question is really pretty simple. In my opinion, law firms should spend as much as they possibly can on local service ads because the cost per lead and more importantly, the cost per acquisition is the lowest of any lead that's on the internet. The reason why that is because you're right at the top of Google, so the conversion rate is significantly high, is seriously high. And I would also determine that budget based on the city that you're in and how big of an area you want to cover. And it also depends on the type of attorney work that you do. If you're a personal injury attorney, you want to make your budget very high. The reason why is because your cost per lead and your cost per acquisition, the cost per case, is going to be significantly higher than for a firm that's targeting, let's say, criminal or family law. So how do you determine a reasonable budget that balances visibility and ROI? A reasonable budget that balances visibility and ROI is one that really just gives Google what it wants. The response rate, a great experience for the people that are calling you from Google's platform, then Google is going to continue to rank you at the top and you're going to get that first call and you're going to get the first shot at those really good leads. And so your ROI is going to be very high. Another question, break down your LSA budget. So the budget covers direct phone calls, it covers message leads, and it doesn't cover lead quality. The overall lead quality is a function of the effort that you put into giving these leads the best service possible and the best experience possible, which is a response time that's fast and really good reviews from the people that you serve when they find you on the Google local service ads platform. How do you allocate funds for maximum efficiency? Ad spend versus lead quality. You don't have to run at that maximum budget all the time. You can always turn the budget down. I would start on the side of making that budget for Google higher than what you maybe feel comfortable with, because Google wants to see that you're committed to the platform. So if Google sees that you're committed to the platform, then they're going to be more likely to send you leads and they're going to be higher quality leads. So that's one of the insider tips that I would give you. If you get more leads than you thought you were going to get, great, problem to have. Just turn that budget down. I wouldn't turn it off, because if you turn it off, it's sometimes hard to get those leads to start coming back in again. This is why it's really important to have somebody that's there with you to pull those levers with the understanding of what the consequences are, because you could just have everything just shut off for like a week or two. And some people just keep tinkering with their LSA ads and they never really figure out why their ads never really started. It's because they just keep tinkering with it, and Google doesn't like that. How do Google local service ads drive more leads for your law firm compared to traditional advertising? This is part of another R that we're talking about, which is sometimes you get refunds, but part of that refund process is this survey process. If you do this spin wheel, that's when you're gonna get the most out of Google local service ads, and you're gonna get more leads than you would from your traditional advertising. And the conversion of those leads is going to be much higher because you've got the 5 psychological triggers. You'll notice they've got the social proof, they've got the scarcity, the specificity, the authority in order to get you to take action. And all of those are baked into the local service ads platform. So that's the reason why you will see the conversion rate to be much higher with local service ads than with traditional advertising. As a matter of fact, we've had case studies that Google's done on our clients. One of the attorneys is How Law up in Georgia. They did a case study to determine what the cost per acquisition was for Google local service ads versus their other campaign type, which is pay per click. And this was about 4 years ago. And even then, the cost per acquisition was half for Google local service ads versus Google pay per click. How do you track and adjust your spending based on performance? So the way that you track and adjust your spending based on performance with local service ads is that you keep focusing on that cost per lead and the cost per conversion. Let's say the average criminal attorney is going to be generating about $5,000 in revenue from the cases that they get. What it is that you're going to be making, you want to tie that directly back to what you're spending and what you're willing to spend. That's really the best way to answer this question. I would say typically we're looking at about a 1 in 3 or a 3x return on ad spend. If you make 10,000, you'd be willing to spend about 3,000 to generate the 10,000. So in other words, if you give me $1, I'll give you $3 back. That's a great return on ad spend. Adjusting your budget for best results. When should you increase or decrease your LSA budget? I would say that you would want to decrease your LSA budget if you're just not making a great return on ad spend. So let's say that you're spending $5,000 and you're making $5,000. Obviously, that's not a good return on ad spend. Now, have I experienced that? I have not experienced that in the years that I've been helping businesses run Google local service ads. So I highly doubt that it's going to happen with your business. And again, you've got to consider the lifetime value of these clients, because most of these clients that you get are not just going to be there one time. They're going to be repeat, and they're going to be referring to other people. So there is a lifetime value that needs to be considered as well. So how do you know if you're overspending or underfunding your campaigns? Most likely you're underfunding your campaigns. If you really look at the cost per case or cost per acquisition, you're most likely underfunding, because most likely you're generating cases for a number that is generating significant revenue for your practice. And I think if you really looked at what you're acquiring a new case for and you compare that to what you're acquiring cases for from your other campaign types, I think you would be very surprised, and I think you would turn off the other campaigns and put more funds and more effort into giving Google what it wants for the Google local service ads campaign, because all of those five psychological triggers are baked into it, and that's the reason why you get that high conversion rate. If you'd like to discuss your LSA strategy with my team, text Audit to 619-304-5155 to schedule a call. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.